Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our meeting. I call this meeting of the Standing Senate Committee on Banking, Trade and Commerce to order. I have to inform those that are around the table and our listening public that due to a vote that is taking place in the Senate chamber at 5:30 today, the committee will suspend at 5:10 p.m. to allow members to return to the chamber for the vote. The committee will then resume after the vote, which will be at approximately 5:45 or 5:50. Today, the committee is holding its fifth meeting as part of its study on the use of digital currency, which began 2 weeks ago with a presentation by the Department of Finance. We have subsequently heard from several academics as well as the Bank of Canada. In testimony, government officials made reference to Bitcoin ATMs, which currently operate in a number of Canadian cities, including here in Ottawa. Officials also presented the receipt of a Bitcoin purchase processed by Calgary-based Canadian virtual exchange, better known as CaVirtex. As follow-up, we are pleased to welcome today Mr. Kyle Kemper and Miss Victoria Van Eyck, partners with the Bitcoin Strategy Group, to give a presentation on the everyday uses of Bitcoin. And they have actually brought along, as you can see, a Bitcoin ATM. And we also welcome Mr. Joseph David, President and CEO of CaVirtex, who is joined by his advisor, Mr. Larry O'Brien, to discuss the role of Bitcoin exchanges. Now, the presentations, which are going to take approximately 20 minutes each, are to be followed by the live purchase of a Bitcoin using the ATM led by Mr. Kemper and Mr. Haseeb Awan, co-founder of the ATM's manufacturer, BitAccess. I hope to finish the presentations and demonstrations before suspending at about 5:10, so I would ask that we keep things moving along and that members wait to ask questions following the demonstration. We have arranged that the room and the witnesses will be available after the meeting should members have follow-up questions or want to purchase some Bitcoins themselves. I now turn to Mr. Kemper for his presentation. Mr. Kemper, the floor is yours. And particularly, I'd like to express our appreciation for the effort that you have put in to bring your machine along with you.
You're most welcome, Senator Gerstein, and thank you to all the senators for having us here. So we are here today to showcase, using examples, exactly how one purchases math-based currencies, specifically Bitcoin. Before we get into this, though, I want to quickly explain the opportunity that Canada has been presented with. So due to our laissez-faire stance on Bitcoin so far, Canada has become one of the leading countries in terms of Bitcoin entrepreneurship and innovation. From Vancouver to St. John, people are coming together to take advantage of this opportunity. Around the world, countries like Germany, Australia, the USA, Singapore, Luxembourg, and South Africa are actively trying to understand and figure out how Bitcoin relates to finance, taxation, commerce, and innovation. We have an opportunity before us to become a global leader on this Bitcoin opportunity. Before we can come to any conclusions, we must understand what Bitcoin is, how it works, and what the future with Bitcoin may look like. As we know from previous presentations, Bitcoin by definition is a decentralized, open source medium for sending value over the internet. We are not here today to talk about the science behind Bitcoin, but instead how the average user gets into it, starting with the creation of a Bitcoin wallet. My colleague Victoria is now going to introduce what a Bitcoin wallet is.
Hi everybody, thank you for having me. My name is Victoria. I'm here to talk about Bitcoin wallets. Everyone who uses Bitcoin needs a wallet to store their Bitcoin in. Bitcoin is similar to traditional currency in this way. We can spend it, we can save it for later spending, we can hold it for speculative purposes, or we can transfer it to people around the world. This is no different than fiat. We keep spending cash in our wallets to have on hand. we keep a slightly larger amount in our checking account so we can do routine transfers. And we should keep the majority of our money in investments that allow our money to grow. So please keep this in mind when I talk about storing Bitcoin. The first way to store Bitcoin is through a hot wallet. A hot wallet is an application that is connected to the internet that allows me to send Bitcoin using a browser on my computer or from my phone. So, just like a real-life wallet that we keep our cash in, or a checking account, we keep only a minimal amount in a hot wallet, usually our spending money or what we like having on hand. For the Bitcoin we want to keep and spend at a later date, we use cold storage or an offline wallet. The majority of users of Bitcoin keep their Bitcoin in cold storage, as it is considered the safest way to store Bitcoin. Cold storage, or an offline wallet, is not connected to the internet. An example of cold storage would be a USB stick or a hard drive. Some Bitcoiners take security a step further and use deep cold storage. An example of this would be keeping Bitcoin on a USB stick in a safety deposit box. So as you can see, there are a few ways to store Bitcoin, and it's very important that everyone who uses Bitcoin understands these different ways to store it. Before I can store any Bitcoin, I need to acquire some, so I'll turn the scene back to Kyle, and he will explain how we go about doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. So broadly speaking, there are three ways a person can acquire Bitcoin. You can buy Bitcoin directly off another holder, you can buy from an exchange, or you can buy from an ATM like the one we have right here. I will start by talking about how you buy it directly off another person. And to actually do this, we're going to physically sell Bitcoin between the two of us just to kind of show that I would like $20 and I will buy it from Victoria, who is a Bitcoin holder. So the first thing we do is I show Victoria my public key. So my public key is a QR code that represents my Bitcoin address. I show it to Victoria. She chooses to scan a public key from her wallet. She then inputs the amount of Bitcoin she wants to send to me, and her phone will actually do the conversion. So it's like 0.05 Bitcoin or 0.08 Bitcoin is effectively $20. And she presses send. It kind of goes through some kind of packaging it all up. And then on my side, as soon as the transaction happens, the value of those Bitcoins, the ownership of those Bitcoins that are held in her account come directly over to mine. So, and then as soon as I receive it, it's $20. I have purchased $20 worth of Bitcoin from her.
Thank you, sir.
And that is effectively. Would you like to see Senator Monte? Please verify it's real. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So the transaction has just showed up in my wallet. So that is like the kind of the primary way that Bitcoin many people kind of transact in Bitcoin, and there are sites out there that allow for the direct kind of connection of purchasing parties. But kind of the more the second way to purchase it, and this is why Joseph is here. Joseph David is the CEO of CaVirtex, or CaVirtex, Canada's largest Bitcoin exchange, and he will now present on his exchange.
Thank you, everyone. Would you like me to speak in the mic? Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph David. I'm CEO of CaVirtex. And I first want to say it's an absolute honor to be here in Ottawa to talk to government and to educate you and to tell you what has been going on, the movement that has been going on in Canada, and how Canadians are embracing Bitcoin, as you're about to see. So our objectives for today is simply to explain how Bitcoin works and the challenges that we face, as well as to discuss how the government can help foster adoption. The agenda here is we're just going to go through an introduction to the Bitcoin exchange, development and acceptance of Bitcoin by merchants, and the challenges faced. So first, we'll start with an introduction to the Bitcoin exchange. First, I just want to say this is meant to say a quick definition slide. Whenever you see the word abbreviation BTC, I am referring to Bitcoin. It's the first virtual currency to achieve widespread adoption, most popular, and it's like the virtual gold. The analogy of gold and silver makes Litecoin, abbreviation LTC, the silver to Bitcoin's gold. The reason I bring this up in my presentation is our Canadian exchange allows you to trade Bitcoins and Litecoins.
Down just a bit.
Sorry.
This is being translated.
Got
and
it.
they're running a little ahead of you.
I'll slow down.
Behind you, I should say.
So the reason I'm showing Litecoin is simply because we accept it, but the focus of this presentation is only on Bitcoin. So before CaVirtex came along, the only way you could get Bitcoin was person-to-person cash transfers, literally meeting at a Denny's coffee shop and exchanging cash and performing this transaction you just witnessed right here. The other way you could do it is by email money transfers from person to person. Now, those are very prone to fraud, so that was not a real good way to get them. So when my friend came to me in January 2011 and said, you know, this is ridiculous. Canadians want Bitcoin. There's no exchange. Let's make a Canadian exchange. And that's when we started. And this is the bottom example just shows you that to this day, you don't have to use a Canadian exchange. You can transfer your money, wire transfer your money to Europe or to Japan and buy Bitcoins internationally, even to this day and before Vertex came along. But if you do that frequently, your Canadian bank account will be shut down. And I am a personal testimony to you now to tell you that 2 of my personal accounts with Canadian banks have been shut down when they asked me what was being transferred, and I responded with the truth, Bitcoin, and they shut my accounts down. So there's big danger to transferring money internationally offshore. So CaVirtex is the first and largest Bitcoin exchange in Canada. We launched in June 2011. 34 months of operation makes us one of the oldest exchanges in the world. We only service Canadian citizens and residents. That is my decision. That is the vision of my company, and I believe it gives us more security to remain in Canada and not to even think about going offshore because there is so much opportunity here in Canada. We have 40,000 customer accounts in Canada today, and the mind-boggling and staggering number that I show you before here, we have traded over $80 million Canadian into and out of Bitcoin in Canada. So this warrants your attention, I think, I hope. So again, this is meant to say what is a Bitcoin exchange? It's a simple act of buying and selling Bitcoins with Canadian dollars. Now, we, the exchange, don't sell Bitcoins. We simply match a buyer of a Bitcoin who has Canadian dollars and a seller of a Bitcoin who wants the Canadian dollars. We simply match them and charge a fee for that match. This is a 34-month price chart for reference purposes that shows you the enormous rise of the Bitcoin. You can see that in June 2011, when we started, all the way up until about March, the Bitcoin price was $5 Canadian per Bitcoin. You will then see a rapid increase to over $1,000 Canadian, and then you'll see a decline to about $500 Canadian where we are today. Current price of Bitcoin is around $500. On the compliance side, we've always been proactive and followed all FINTRAC money service handling regulations. This outlines the statuses you must obtain to even work with Vertex. If you are unverified with just an email, you can't do anything with us. If you are level 1, you must become level 1 or level 2 verified and have all of these requirements to proceed. Once you are level 1 or level 2 verified, you can start seeing the methods here where you can start depositing via bill payment, online bill payment, wire transfer. Direct debit is where we withdraw money from your Canadian bank account. Again, we only service Canadian citizens with Canadian bank accounts. And withdraw means that we can send you Canadian dollars for the Bitcoins you've sold. So you can see that at level 2, we can send you $500,000 per month for the Bitcoins you've sold. I'm now just going to go through a step-by-step of exactly what to press and how to buy a Bitcoin on our site. You've just become level 1 verified. You're going to press deposit funds. You're going to say, I want $500 of Bitcoin. The method I'm going to choose is online bill payment. You now make the payment with your online bank, and you wait 2 to 5 days for email confirmation. Banking takes time in the Canadian dollar world. Once you get the email confirmation, your balance of CAD will increase to $500. You now have Canadian dollars on our exchange ready to purchase a Bitcoin. You then go to our open trades and look at the prices. On the left-hand side, you'll see buyers with Canadian dollars. On the right-hand side, you'll see sellers with Bitcoin. For this example, the top seller is willing to part with his Bitcoin for $484 Canadian. This was taken 3 days ago. And we are going to go ahead and purchase it. We put the amount of Bitcoin in as 1. We see the price there of $484 with a total of $491.26, including our fee. We simply press buy, and our balance changes instantly to 1.000 Bitcoin. Our CAD balance dropped from $500 down to $8.74 remaining because we just bought a Bitcoin. We didn't have to buy 1 Bitcoin. We could have bought a decimal portion as well. Once we have that Bitcoin, we can then withdraw it immediately from the exchange. We can send it immediately to wherever we want, or we can keep that Bitcoin on the exchange. If you choose our exchange to hold the Bitcoin, we use a security measure called a hot wallet. What that means is only 2% of customers' Bitcoins are actually held on our website. So in the event of a hack or a physical theft of our equipment, only 2% of your Bitcoins would be lost. We keep the other 98% in cold storage, offline, in paper wallets, not USB sticks, but actual paper wallets that have passwords. And we use a large matrix of people and different levels to administer this cold storage and refill the hot wallet as necessary. On the merchant side, my dream is for Bitcoin adoption, is to have every single online merchant accept Bitcoin as an option on their checkout page. Here's what I envision. You go to your favorite store online, you have never heard of Bitcoin before, and you see the following. Standard payment method, $500 for your clothes you're shopping for, let's say. Bitcoin says $450. The first question you might ask yourself is, why is it cheaper in Bitcoin? And the second question you're going to say is, how do I get this thing called a Bitcoin? That creates awareness. So I have a sales force trying to sign up online merchants as we speak. Here's a real brick and mortar example of the standard pub in downtown Ottawa, where you can buy a beer and chicken wings for $20 Canadian in cash. But if you pay in Bitcoin via your mobile phone, you'll get a $6 discount, and you'll get your beer and chicken wings for $14 in Bitcoin equivalent, as long as you pay in Bitcoin. Why are merchants discounting Bitcoin? Why is it cheaper in Bitcoin? Because they love these selling points. Near instant delivery, 24/7. You saw that transaction appear in 7 seconds? Very quick. No fraudulent chargebacks. This is my favorite thing about the Bitcoin. As a business owner in the telecom space, at my height, my company did $1 million. $200,000 went to fraud, went to chargebacks. When I discovered that Bitcoin has 0 fraud and 0 chargebacks, I said, where do I sign? I want all my customers to pay with Bitcoin. Transactions are not affected by banking hours or holidays. This is a 24/7, 365-day a year, on all the time network. We are lower fees than existing payment processors. We charge 1.5%. The existing payment providers charge between 2 and 5% and can't say the same things that I just said above. Current state is that we have 22 Canadian merchants online accepting Bitcoin in Canada, with 150 Canadian merchants in progress to be set up within a month, and an additional 1,000 merchants that our sales force is signing up as well in the next 6 months. The most exciting part that I want to share with you in this presentation is the question I get all the time is, that doesn't sound like much. You only have 1,000 people in Canada that take Bitcoin? That's not a movement. That's what's going on. My answer to you is, you can take Bitcoin and convert them into Canadian dollars and get a Canadian dollar debit card. You can then take that debit card and go to 58,000 real, regular cash ATMs, as well as 750,000 point of sale terminals across Canada, and go shopping. The merchant has now accepted Bitcoin without even knowing it, because you've converted the Bitcoin into Canadian dollars. The challenges faced by the industry are great and extreme. But the first is the most misunderstood concept of Bitcoin, and that is that all Bitcoin transactions are anonymous. All Bitcoin transactions are actually not anonymous. They are permanently stored in the blockchain, and the record of them is available at any time. Let's take an example of Jane Doe. Below her, you see a Bitcoin address. That's Jane Doe's Bitcoin address. She wants to send her Bitcoins to that address. Now, is that address an illegal supplier of guns or drugs? No, it's a flower shop. How do we know it's a flower shop? Because that's the Bitcoin address on the flower shop's website, and the Bitcoin information that travels through the internet is tracked. So every single time a Bitcoin is sent from Jane Doe to the flower shop to the 1,000 people on the internet, we have that information. We, the exchange, can tell you it was Jane Doe, because Jane Doe had to be level 1 verified to even deal with us. We have to know your customer. We have to know who she is. Bitcoin exchanges have all the user data and act as a choke point. By regulating and sanctioning a Bitcoin exchange, I will happily give you the information on all transactions. I conducted a survey, and I gave our customers an option. I said, if I could give you guys half-price fees and go offshore with international wire transfers only, that's option 1. Or what if we stayed with the current fee schedule, kept banking in Canada, and let you deposit by online bill payment, direct credit, and direct debit, and wire transfer. 92% of our customers said that they want to keep us in Canada, and I personally want to stay in Canada. Because TD, CIBC, RBC, Bank of Montreal, and Scotiabank, the 5 major banks in Canada, have all shut us down and refused to do business with us, citing regulatory uncertainty. 16 other smaller banks I tried, also in Canada, all said no, thank you. Good news, though, is that we do have a banking partner in Canada. We're still in Canada, but we're paying great expense and fees to remain in Canada. We are also, a challenge of operating an exchange is that we are constantly under attack by hackers and thieves that choose to use online attacks to try to steal our Bitcoins. To date, we have never been hacked, and we have not lost any Bitcoins or customer funds. In conclusion, I think Bitcoin is here to stay. Bitcoin transmits $300 million in a 24-hour period. It is not a little fad anymore. It is a growing phenomenon that everyone wants to embrace. We want to keep the banking in Canada. And I propose that you regulate us the same way you would foreign currency transactions. Simply consider Bitcoin a foreign currency. We have a money service business license right now to be a foreign exchange dealer. If you expand your definition of Bitcoin to be a foreign currency, all FinTrack compliance and limits and KYC information would apply to us. We would report suspicious transactions, and we would comply with all of our obligations under our license. The question is, can government act quickly enough? Bitcoin is on light speed. We are growing dramatically and intensely. And the longer we take to put regulation in place, the more difficult it's going to be for me to keep us in Canada. I invite your questions. Thank you. Thank you.
We had explained to us that there are 3 ways to transfer Bitcoins. The exchange, as outlined by Mr. David, the demonstration that Mr. Kemper and Ms. Van Eyck indicated to us, and the third is to purchase a Bitcoin. So with that, I'm going to ask my assistant, Chris Reed, on behalf of the committee to bring forth $100, and he's going to have a demonstration as to how this is going to work. Is that right?
Unfortunately, at the current moment, we're just having some connectivity issues, so perhaps after the break we can do a demonstration. However, we have Haseeb Awan from BitAccess does have
some opening comments he would like to
has
make?
some comments absolutely on
Please proceed,
on
Mr. Awan.
ATM.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Abdul Haseeb Awan. I'm a co-founder of BitAccess, which is an Ottawa-based startup. First of all, thanks, Senator, for inviting us and honoring us. Sure.
Translators can keep up.
Yeah. So thanks, Senator, for inviting us and giving us the honor to demonstrate this Bitcoin ATM in this honorable building. So in 2013, me and three of my co-founders, we founded this company. One of my co-founder, Ryan Wallace, is on that side. And we started a company in Ottawa, and interestingly, all the manufacturing is done in Ottawa. So we kept it local. We are a 10-member team, and we are going to 15 members probably in next 2 months. That being said, I'll tell you what exactly we do. We are a Bitcoin ATM manufacturer, also known as digital kiosk. You can go to any of the machine and buy or sell Bitcoins, similar to what happened in an exchange or what happens was demonstrated by Kyle and his colleague. This all thing happened, but in a very secure way, followed by a FinTrack guideline and go through all the verification methodology. Right now, we are operating in 10 different countries across 4 continents and we can claim the first spot in the world in this space. And we are shipping these machines all over the world with Made in Canada badge. Right now, we have customers in Slovenia, Dubai, Hong Kong, US, Mexico, Belgium, Australia, Germany, Switzerland, obviously Canada. The closest one machine that we brought here is installed in Byward Market at Clock Tower. Our first machine was installed on January 1st, 2014 at Bitcoin Decentral in Toronto. Now, coming to why people would use these machines over Joseph's or the way Kyle described. So the first way is obviously, the first wave of Bitcoin was where people were mining. Second wave was they went to exchange. Third wave was like a common person. If my grandmother wants to go and buy a Bitcoin, she probably won't make an account. It takes a lot of time, and it's much more hassle in this case. She can walk up to an ATM, do the KYC on the machine, and purchase a Bitcoin. Similarly, if you want to cash out your Bitcoins, you can go to the same machine and take fiat for the Bitcoins. This is why Bitcoin are used, because buying from individuals that you are meeting at a coffee shop is risky. You're meeting with a random person in a coffee hour that you just met or find online. You're walking with a lot of cash, and the transaction might happen. Secondly, if you go to Joseph Exchange, it will take 2 to 5 days. Obviously, you have to make an account and all those things. So this is the third way to obtain a Bitcoin ATM. As I told before, we are operating across 4 continents, which makes that it's very flexible to make it, to obtain Bitcoins. So on the machine, if you walk up to a machine, you have to, for a smaller transaction, we require a telephone number. As soon as you walk up to a machine, you have to enter your telephone number, which sends you a code. You have to enter that code into the machine in order to proceed. Similar to two-factor authentication as being used by a lot of colleagues in this room. If you are going beyond a certain transaction threshold level, as being said by compliance committee in every country, you have to scan your ID, which get face match, and it verifies this is the right person who's using this ID. After being verified, the person is only allowed to do the transaction. Every transaction is linked to an ID. There's no way, such way as we call anonymous transaction. Every transaction, as Joseph mentioned earlier, can be tracked down at any given point of time. Right now, the ID technology that we are using is one of the sophisticated technology being used in the world. We use the most advanced form of face match ID verification, which detects all the counterfeit detection for any kind of ID. So I believe we will have a demonstration of our ATM after the break, and you can automatically have a small transaction, and it will tell you what our machine is capable of.
Thank you very much. Now we've had 4 presentations. Mr. O'Brien, are you sure that you don't want to say a few words to the committee?
Senator, it's a pleasure to be here. And which person in this lineup, because of age, doesn't belong here? But I am delighted to be here in front of this standing committee. My background, and I'm doing this to give you a sense of my perspective on Bitcoin and digital, math-based digital currencies. My background is technology, business, and for a few years anyways, politics. After graduating in physics in 1971, I worked 10 years in IC design and also in the development of the first digitally encrypted mobile secure communication system for the RCMP. Following those 10 years of hands-on work in the technology sector, I founded Calian Technology and led its growth from being a startup company to become a publicly traded company with over $200 million in annual sales. During my 30 years with Calian, I served with Prime Minister Chrétien's Advisory Council on Science and Tech, the ACST. I served with Mike Harris's Ontario Jobs and Investment Board, the OJIB, and I served as chair of a sectorial advisory group in telecommunications or information technology, and was also elected chair of the Canadian Advanced Technology Association. I give you this background to let you know that I've been around long enough to have seen a lot of major and minor changes in the technology sector. And during this 40 years of technology and also of business, I've experienced two other major disruptive technologies. The introduction of the IBM PC in 1980-81, and also the introduction of the Internet in 1990. And I can assure you that these introductions of these disruptive technologies all have a lot of things in common. The most important being that most people have vastly bigger expectations of the short-term changes that these technologies will have, and they vastly underestimate the long-term impact of the introduction of these technologies. I believe that math-based digital currency is also one of these disruptive technologies that could alter banking, trade, and commerce in Canada around the world in the same way that PCs did for computing and the Internet has done for communications. Traditionally, disruptive technologies have created a blizzard of these misconceptions of real and imagined or imagined reasons why the new technology should not be adopted. As well, you will often hear reasons why a disruptive technology will fail from people with a vested interest in the status quo. Good examples are when a renowned radio expert defined TV as something that would be a flash in the pan, and the president of Digital Equipment, a computing company, said that the PC would never catch on, asking who would ever want a computer on their desk. So these are these are things that you're going to see. There's going to be a blizzard of misinformation and misconceptions about the topic of Bitcoin. We all understand that in order to understand Bitcoin, you almost have to suspend disbelief for an hour or two. But there are other challenges that need to be taken more seriously. With these challenges include the potential for tax evasion, funding of terrorism, and other illegal and fraudulent activities, such as fraudulent activities that can occur in exchanges, ATMs, and wallets. With respect to the first series of challenges, tax evasion and money laundering and funding of terrorism, there are certainly laws that can be applied to these circumstances, and recent arrests in the United States indicate that these laws can work. On the fraud side, the fraud seen in the digital currency world, the virtual currency world, is without exception related to the on-ramps and the off-ramps. And by that I mean the exchanges, the ATMs, and also the web-based wallets. These on and off-ramps between the fiat currency or your dollar currency and the digital currency. For example, Mt. Gox closed with over $300 million of clients' money vanishing. There are multiple cases of exchanges simply closing their virtual door and vanishing in the night without a trace. Today, and there's a reason for that. Today, in any location in Canada and in the world, you can start a virtual exchange, such as the one that CaVirtex has started, with less public oversight than if you were opening a hot dog stand. In other words, there's no regulations, there's no barriers to entry, there's no public oversight of the process of getting into the on-ramp and off-ramp business. This lack of oversight has created a regulatory environment where fraud is easier to contemplate for a young entrepreneur than building a solid business that will last forever. I believe the most important issue for digital currencies is this lack of public oversight relating to the exchanges. As the CEO of CaVirtex just mentioned, the industry needs the government to provide oversight and regulate the exchanges and ATMs to create confidence in the entire digital currency world. After you've done that, the market forces will determine whether or not they will be accepted or not. The market will determine on its own whether which digital currency wins, and the future will be determined by market forces. Interesting, this lack of oversight on the establishment of exchanges also has impacted the relationship between the exchanges and their banking partners. Banking partners have incredibly difficult times dealing with entities that are not subject to the same regulatory scrutiny as the banks are vis-a-vis inspection and security. Regulation of the Bitcoin technology or the introduction of financial institution-like regulations for exchanges will not only ensure conformance with the existing laws, but also better enable a working relationship between exchanges like CaVirtex and the banking community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Perhaps I could just start with a very general question to you all. To set the universe that we're dealing with, how many exchanges exist, whether they're big or small? How many ATMs sell Bitcoins today? And how many digital currencies are we talking about that circulate?
If I may answer, the number of worldwide Bitcoin exchanges is 8 that are doing serious business, but about 30 if you count every single one of them. So we're talking very small numbers worldwide. In Canada, there are, to my knowledge, 2. We are the #1 and largest. We do have 1 competitor in Canada right now.
Thank you. ATMs?
ATMs.
Yes, right now we have 15 machines operational, and to date, we have known around like 22 in total. So we are controlling like 70% of the market, probably. So
That's the world market?
that's world market, yeah.
You have 50?
15,
1-5.
1-5. Yeah,
1-5, and there are
1-5
22 altogether.
altogether. Yeah, the real ATMs. Yeah, then people have some kiosks, so they just converted like a normal kiosk, like a self-checkout kiosk into a Bitcoin ATM that you can buy Bitcoin from, but you cannot sell. So if you say about a real ATM, there are probably 22 of them.
And the number of digital currencies besides Bitcoin that
If I can answer that, Bitcoin is the major #1 with a $13 billion market capitalization. Litecoin is in second place, but far, far behind. And on top of Litecoin, there are 20 other copycats of Bitcoin. None of them are even near a third place. They're all in last place.
Sorry. There are
Ms.
actually
Van Eyck?
over, do I press the microphone?
please?
There are actually over 100 different alt currencies in the market right now.
But they're all very minor, right? Compared to, yeah. My mistake, my apologies.
Thank you. It's now 5 to 5. Being cognizant of the clock, we have 15 minutes. I want to move to our list of questioners, starting with Senator Black, to be followed by Senator Massicotte, and then we'll break and then continue back with a most interesting presentation. Thank you. Senator Black.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each of you for tremendous presentations. I would like to raise a couple of questions, and then you can determine how you would want to respond to them. Mr. Kemper, I was taken by your initial comment that you view that there is a tremendous opportunity for Canada if we get what I presume your other colleagues are saying, if we get the regulatory bit right.
Correct.
Very well. Can you talk to us for a moment or two about what that opportunity looks like in your view?
Well, I mean, we can look at the amount of venture capital that's being put towards Bitcoin innovation, and just the fundings. Like, you know, in the last year, it's, I mean, Joseph might know the numbers, but it's well over 50 million has been kind of dedicated towards, you know, young startup companies. We also see like the meetup groups that are happening in cities all across Canada, where people are coming together, and just the passion being exuded by these young, old people, ex-bankers. Like, it kind of touches all different kind of corners of society, that people who are really interested in seeing Bitcoin go further. And one of the things that I've kind of noticed about this all is that everyone who gets involved in it, at first everyone is a skeptic. Like, no matter what. Like, it's very rare to meet someone the first time you tell them about Bitcoin, they're like, oh, I love it. No, it's I have questions, and so you go through the questions, and then, like, you know, they become a little bit more open to understanding it. And, you know, so the skeptic becomes the student, and then the student becomes the teacher. And this is kind of the path that is just growing, and it's just, and the message is just getting out there. And this weekend in Toronto is going to be the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada kind of you know, open membership organization is holding an expo, and we're expecting over 1,000 people to be taking part in this. And Joseph David is one of the gold sponsors of it, and we're going to have kind of, you know, luminaries from the whole industry coming together to discuss how we move forward. And so this is about, you know, and to come back to your initial kind of question of, you know, what is this opportunity? Well, to understand like what we can do and where we can go, the best thing we can do is ask questions and like educate ourselves about this. Because right now Bitcoin is just kind of the first. Like, obviously it's the biggest and it's the most powerful, but it's the first. Like, it's kind of like the 14K modem in terms of adoption. Like, where it goes, we don't all know. Like, in the mid-90s, we knew that the internet was powerful and had all these great things that could happen. We never knew that, you know, Facebook was going to come from it, Netflix was going to come from it, this powerful disruptive force across all industries into what it's turned into today. And so, you know, this is the kind of message that I'd like to leave with you guys going forward is, let's keep an open mind towards it, because it can be easy to kind of create rash decisions, and there's a lot of different industries that are kind of being affected here. So just take it one step at a time, and I commend everybody here for launching an 18-month study. Like, that is a third of the whole lifetime of Bitcoin. Like, so,
Kyle, could I add
Please.
to that answer just a little
Absolutely,
bit from an
please.
economic perspective? Bitcoin, one of the endearing qualities from a banking perspective is the frictionless nature of Bitcoin, the low cost of being able to transfer value from one organization to another organization. The reason I mention this is that if you know, I've seen a number of different studies, but if you think you're going to cut the costs of financial transactions even by 20% using this distributed network, I mean, you got to think out 10 years, but if you think of it from that perspective, you're releasing a tremendous amount of economic value added into the economy. So there's a pathway here using digital currencies, math-based digital currencies, to reduce the cost of economic or financial transactions in the Canadian economy, which can do nothing but increase our efficiency and our effectiveness as a nation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I have a second question. Would
Please
you
go
prefer me
ahead.
to wait, or?
No, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. David or Mr. O'Brien, you have talked to us about, urging us really to get the regulation right. If you would be good enough to give us a primer, a 1, 2, 3, 4, what does that look like? Mr. David, you mentioned the concept of make us look like a foreign currency transaction firm. Is that enough, or is something more required?
I think that is enough. Foreign currencies are regulated very highly in banks. Take, for example, the euro dollar. If you are doing a euro dollar to Canadian dollar transaction, the bank requires information on who you are. The bank requires limits and velocity controls to be maintained on dollar amounts. Again, all these would apply to Bitcoin. I don't see any reason to complicate it, to overthink it, to invent new rules. Just use existing infrastructure. Make it a new currency. Call it a digital currency and put it under the foreign exchange regulations.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien?
And I agree with my CEO, of course, as I would have to, as I do. But having said that, having said that, I also believe that there should be some institution-like hoops for exchanges to jump through before they become authorized to trade in digital math-based currencies. In other words, it shouldn't be possible for two people in their underwear in their basement to start an exchange, because it's too open to fraudulent activities. So I think the combination of those two acts, of applying the Forex exchange and creating an institution-like criteria for opening up or using ATMs, exchanges, or web-based wallets, probably sets the groundwork to reinforce the consumer confidence in virtual currency.
Great. Thank you all. Tremendously helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Massicott.
Thank you,
Be
Chair.
followed by Senator Belmar.
Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. It's very interesting. The whole idea is very interesting, and especially the technology of the chain of information, which is highly secure, is very interesting. I understand this whole thing started off from a libertarian, from a total free market approach, where that was the motivation. And one of its achievements, and you hear much literature, is free of government involvement, free of government supervision. But now you're talking about we need government regulation. We need to give certainty or credibility to the whole process. The concern I would have is twofold, is that, whoops, we're going away from the whole original objective of the Bitcoin or other forms of currency. And the other thing is, do you appreciate the costs? Because if you want to be regulated like a bank or foreign exchange, that you may want to form part of the payment system. And I highly suspect at your size, you'll go bankrupt within a week. I mean, it's a lot of bureaucracy there. And just as you know, you got to record every transfer. You got to know your client. Any transfer in excess of $10,000, you need to know, like, lots of information. It seems to be totally contrary to the whole issue at your starting point. You want to make a comment on that?
I would yes, very much like to make a comment. Very pure and simply and plainly, banks will not deal with us if there's no regulation.
Talk to me about your experience. Is it you or Mr. Kemper said when you tried to do a transfer?
Yep.
But it was offshore. If you did a transfer to a Canadian bank or did a transfer to the United States, would they have shut down your bank account?
Yes. Banks view international transfers riskier than domestic.
But is it because you were dealing Bitcoin or because you're dealing with offshore?
It's because I was dealing both offshore and Bitcoin. Offshore amplifies it. Bitcoin is also a factor as well.
So if you use your bank account, and what did you want to use your bank account for? Deposit monies, deposit Bitcoins? What did you want to use it for?
It was a general purpose account for investments. I actually had stocks and other investments that flowed in there as well. But the fact that I received a Bitcoin incoming wire transfer for Canadian dollar equivalent offshore, and Bitcoin being an unregulated thing, the bank chose to just shut my account down.
But it probably relates to the fact that Bitcoin, in the media anyways, has been related to be an underground network for drug dealers and so on. I presume it relates to that. They're concerned with that issue. So.
Yes, it's because they're not willing to, again, with the seal of approval of regulation, I think that would calm their fears.
I hear you. I just caution you. You know, the bureaucracy is immense.
Yeah.
These banks are huge. Yeah. They have like multitudes of people to deal with the regulation.
Yeah.
You can't have the cake and eat it too, boy.
Well, let me actually comment on that. We are already following the money service business guidelines for foreign exchange transactions. We're already doing that. We have a verification team. We have 25 employees in our company that are making sure that we're fully compliant. It's already being done.
But it's not as far as Mr. Bryan. He wants to be regulated like a bank.
No, I think what he's referring to is an additional barrier to entry beyond just the MSB side.
Well, I guess I'm just...
And just for clarification purposes, because that's a very good point, I don't think it has to be taken to the extent of regulating a bank, but I think banks have a very difficult time dealing with entities that don't have some scrutiny, because they have a lot to risk in terms of their anti-money laundering and whatever, and they want to know that an organization has at least been compliant with the basic laws that will not put their own operations in jeopardy with the government regulators. And so the somewhere in between having a banking license and having a Wild West free-for-all is likely what should happen. And the public sector, the government, is probably the organization that can provide that public oversight for these without necessarily, without a great deal of additional work on their behalf, because they already have the systems in place.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see we have just 2 or 3 minutes to go. Would you like to start, Senator Belmar? I'm going to break at 10 after, or we can break now. I think that might be better. Get over to the chamber, and I would invite our guests, our panel, and our members. We will reconvene. The vote is at 5:30. We should be back by 10 to 6. I'm sorry, this is just something that came up after we had established this. We will continue. The meeting formally ends at 6:15, but I would encourage again members of the committee, the panel, and our guests to stay on a more informal basis, and we will continue after the 6:15 time period. One question.
Very small, because
very
I have
small one.
another one that's bigger.
Oh,
but
all right.
I'll
Let's
ask
make sure
the
this is the
first
small
one.
We have to vote.
We know what the exchange does. We know what ATM does. But what do you do exactly, the Bitcoin Strategy Group?
Well, so Kyle and I are both new to the sphere within the past year, and we see a need for making it more accessible to people. If we want Bitcoin to grow and be adopted, people need to understand it, and it needs to be brought down to a level where it can be understood easily. So we work with Bitcoin companies on communications, so doing press releases, making sure that they're very technical, lots of these Bitcoiners, right? So when they get on stage and they're speaking to an audience like me, for example, a lot of this is just going over my head. So we work on that, and then we do government relations as well.
And additionally, we're working to build, to lay some of the pillars for future kind of organization within the industry within Canada, because as all the businesses need to focus themselves on just working on their products and services, like Mr. Haseeb Awan, like they are working, like the developers last night were working till 5 o'clock in the morning to get ready for today. Like it is go go go. So this is where kind of experts, like semi-experts, come to the table as well and help distribute their message. So that is our goal, and that is the value we're adding to the market here.
We're now going to suspend. I suspect when we get back that perhaps we should have the demonstration at that point.
Absolutely.
And then we will continue with the questions. Thank you. We are now suspended. Members of the committee, we are going to reconvene again. Thank you for bearing with us while we had our vote. Just to recap, it was indicated at the first part of the meeting that there were 3 ways to transact with Bitcoins: through the exchange, directly from an individual, or through the purchase at an ATM. Having the ATM before us, which I understand is now live, I'm going to call on my trusty assistant to come up and work with our witnesses to affect the transaction. Now, can they hear you from there? Or
Senator, we're both mic'd.
Yeah, the mics are on.
There's the answer.
We should be live.
The answer is yes. Good. The floor is yours.
After Senator.
Okay.
Okay, so Chris, the first step you do is you press buy, and then you enter your phone number. So this is just going to be a small transaction. So we just under 3,000 is the limit we set, or that BitAccess is set. And so, pardon me? Or as FinTrack has set, yes. Yeah. So after we're just having some little bit of a network delay, but it should come through. Okay, so you got a code. So it sends via SMS. It sends a verification code. Please enter it, Chris. Yes, so the machine uses the internet and it sends a unique code to Chris verifying that that phone number he entered, it is him who is using the machine.
Is that a random number?
Yes.
It's only used one time, right?
Correct, but there's nothing like super secret about that number, like doesn't do with the Bitcoin, but it is a way of ensuring that Chris is the only one who's using this, and it's that phone number. So for the ATM producer, it kind of tracks the phone number to the user. So then it asks, do you have a Bitcoin wallet? So if the answer is no, it'll print you out a wallet, and I'll just show you what a wallet looks like. So this is a wallet, and then what we would do then is scan it here, but Chris already has a wallet, so he can scan his wallet too right now.
And it's a simple QR code that I downloaded through BlackBerry World app.
Do I just want to pass that along? So it's recognized his address and shows it up right there. It puts in one bill, $50 registers, which is 0.09 Bitcoin. 2 bills, $100. You're done, so click I'm done, unless you'd like to enter more. It's good for now. Okay. So now it's just sending the Bitcoins to him, and the whole process is basically complete, and it'll just be a second until the Bitcoins register on his wallet. There you go. So Chris has just received Bitcoin. He has just bought 0.1834057 Bitcoin. At the price of, go back to this.
545, I believe it was.
I think it was. He'll get a text message with a receipt of the purchase. It'll say, you purchased that much Bitcoin at 545.24.
And I have received the text message.
No commission. You will pay by 50%.
So no, there is commission. There is the operators of the machines charge a slight transaction fee on top of it, and that's that's the cost of the convenience.
Just quickly interject here. As per my advisor, Larry O'Brien, I'm just going to give you the live quote on Vertex, just so we have a basis for comparison. This is not meant in any way to undermine the price. I just given the second option. So $545 Canadian is the ATM price, and live on Vertex right now, you can buy it for $486. So you can see that people pay a premium to use the ATM, and they're willing to pay that premium.
Laying it down.
Now, Mr. Kemper, could you explain that transaction took about 3 minutes, 4 minutes? Is that typical?
So typically it'll be faster than that. We're just
Faster?
oh yeah, we're having there's some kind of communication issues, us being in a Senate building and network connectivity. Right now we're actually going off the phone, but when it's installed in a location and it's been tested and everything is running right away, it's instant. It's okay. Enter phone number. Oh, text. Okay, enter the confirmation code. Scan your wallet. Put in your money. It depends how much money you're putting in. Now I've been at the clock tower when people have put in $3,000, their full limits, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes it's like it's young people, it's students who are coming in. They see this and they're feeling it.
You mentioned there's 3 ways to do it. Well, always did cash, which obviously is an expensive way to convert, but you also said you can do a transfer, I presume, credit card or a bank account.
So you can top up your exchange account with via bank account, but on the ATM right now it's just cash.
Yeah, but on the bank account, I presume what you need is you want to confirm again. You got to give a phone number, and then you get a number back. But I presume you will need my bank account number, my code number to get into my bank account to allow the transfer because you want to do it electronically. Am I correct in saying that?
Not quite. And if you're talking about the exchange, I just want to correct you. We do not accept credit cards. I believe you said credit cards.
Okay.
No one really accepts credit cards for Bitcoin because credit cards are very prone to fraud and reversible transactions. To answer your second question, if you remember my slide about level 1, level 2 verification, no, what you said is not good enough. We need your government issued ID. We need a proof of address from certain forms that we accept. We may need a bank reference letter if you exceed certain limits. We do a phone verification to phone you at your Canadian phone number to make sure you're a real person and you can answer 12 questions. And this whole process may take up to a week.
Do you require my account number plus my whatever the
Yes, I
the
require your
password?
I don't require your banking password. I only require a transit number, an account number, and a financial institution ID, a 3-digit number of which bank you're with.
But if you don't have my NIP or whatever the password is, you can't get into my account.
Yes, I can through a pre-authorized debit where I take the money out of your account automatically. It just comes out of your checking account.
Shouldn't people worry about that? That means I'm giving you a lot of information
Yep.
because you got a lot of information on me, but I got to trust you real lots because you may dip into a couple of times.
If you don't want to use the method of directly debiting your bank account, you can choose to make an online bill payment. In that case, I don't need any of your bank account information.
And what's the delay for that?
It's faster than a direct debit. Online bill payments, the fastest we've had one in is actually 1 business day.
Because can I share with you? Like I'm a member of Coinbase, which you said is your largest. I think it's the largest person in the United States relative to it. And they give you a choice of credit card. They give you a check to bank account, and I tried all, but for the bank account, they asked you for your bank account plus you got to give the whole transit number, but then you got to give your password. So I can promise you, I choose an account where I certainly never be a lot of money because they can get into that consistently. So, and it's scary a little bit, I must admit. Yep. And then you can use credit card, but then you got many days of delay. I mean, it's scary a little bit. I just gotta tell you my reaction to all that.
Yeah, I recognize that it's scary, but it comes down to reputation. We're an exchange that has a business agenda to convey trust to our customers. So we're not going to start debiting your account without your authorization. It also exposes us to great risk if we do that because the banks will shut us down.
Well, we now understand why Mr. O'Brien was basically saying, give us some credibility because people got to trust you real lots.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go back to our list of questioners. Senator Belmar was in the middle of a question to be followed by Senator Campbell. And just again to indicate, the formal part of the meeting will conclude at 6:15. We will terminate the meeting at that point, but then we will continue on, and we welcome our guests to stay as well. Thank you very much. So, Senator Belmar, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Alors, ma question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question does have a particularity relating to digital currency. This is something that was discussed with experts and with others, and it was considered as a limit for the use of this money. It is a question of volatility of the exchange rate for exchanging bitcoins for money recognized currency. You did illustrate that there may be a difference in price buying a Bitcoin in your exchange or buying from the ATM. But this, of course, I think is related to management costs. But we were told that a Bitcoin can be exchanged for Canadian dollars at different rates in Ottawa. So there are certain fluctuations over time as well. Can you explain to us then this particular characteristic of this type of currency? How do you expect to be reacting to this? How do you expect to respond to this particular limit, so to speak?
I think the question is, how do you differentiate between the different prices in different areas of the country and even the world for that matter? So the Bitcoin price kind of fluctuates against all the market. It very much is a market-driven price. So the different exchanges carry their prices, and there are different kind of indexes that have relative price. CaVirtex has its own price that is the current market price. There's another exchange called, say, Bitstamp that has a market price. There's exchanges in China that have an equivalent price in RMB. There's exchanges in Europe that have in euros. And so when you have all these different exchanges operating, it's really through trading amongst all the different exchanges that you're able to kind of find like a market equilibrium price, kind of a global kind of price. And it all has to do with supply and demand. So that's really, and this is the sense of it's a commodity in a sense. So
Non, ça, je comprends ça. Il y a pas de...
That is something that I can understand. I don't think that there's any difficulty with that relating to volatility, but I did put a question to experts and they told me that all of this, it depends on the demand at the other ATM. And I was thinking that there may be people who will be engaged in speculation on rates and that this might balance out. But I did not get an answer on this particular point. This is why I raised it with you. It seems to me that there are people who might want to buy clothes, for example, who will make a calculation of the price in bitcoins and they will convert it to Canadian dollars and realize that it costs more one way than another. You do not consider this to be a type of limitation for the expansion of the use of Bitcoin?
Point, Senator. In fact, there are some organizations in New York, on the New York Stock Exchange and a few other places that have early plans to create these markets for selling futures, and the belief is that once this is put in play over the next 12 to 18 months, because remember, we're really in early days of the Bitcoin development process here, even though, you know, the Senate is ahead of the power curve here a little bit, having these investigations. It still is early days. It's about the equivalent today of saying that the internet, you know, the internet is only for email.
Okay.
And that's where we are today. I mean, this is early days. There's not a lot of the infrastructure in place, but there are business plans out there right now, a lot in the American side and some in the Canadian side, to start addressing some of these issues of volatility.
Est-ce que je peux rajouter une autre question qui est un...
May I add another question that's linked to some extent? There's also a fact that there's a limit on the quantity of bitcoins. I was told there's 21 million, if I'm not mistaken, and afterwards it will cost too much to make new bitcoins through the way they are generated. I'd like to know whether you see farther on in the future, do you see any way of dealing with this particular limit?
The protocol of the Bitcoin is such that it can be divided down to 9 decimal places, 8 decimal places. So you can have a milli Bitcoin, a thousandth of a Bitcoin, or a 100,000th of a Bitcoin. And I think as we get to the year 2040, 2041, and all of the Bitcoins have been mined, I think we'll start to see a growth in the value in fiat of the Bitcoins, but then people will start using smaller portions of a Bitcoin. So a tenth of a Bitcoin may be worth whatever, $100 at the time. So there's going to be a gradual long-term stabilization of the volatility, and there's also going to be a gradual long-term increase in the value of Bitcoin as it is adopted by users and merchants.
Alors, c'est pour ça que les gens l'utilisent aussi as a store.
This is why people are using it to store value. There are lots of people who hold bitcoins expecting future developments. Thank you.
Senator Campbell, to be followed by Senator Green.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for coming today. This is it's fascinating. The two questions I have, the first is the suggestion that if we simply made this a foreign currency under regulations, that it would cover all of the bases that governments normally are concerned about. My question is, so the government says, okay, we consider Bitcoin foreign currency, and away we go. And then along comes Mr. O'Brien, and he makes a Larry coin. And it is and I love the Larry coin because that's a great name. And it's worth nothing right now, but hang on, okay? What happens when I go to try and have mine called a foreign currency, and are we going to just see a huge replication of foreign currencies? And if so, then that, from my point of view, probably defeats just covering it by foreign currency. What's the answer to that?
Well, yes, you bring up a very important point. The first comment I can make on that is just look at the market use of the coin. Bitcoin as I said, transfers $300 million equivalent in a 24-hour period, the Larry coin would be zero. So you could take a today. That's right. So you could make
no idea.
You could make a well. Hang on. If you believe in the Larry coin, you could make a requirement that a certain threshold have to be reached. Or you could make a separate category. You do bring up a complex question. I wish I had a direct answer, or the solution. But the direct answer I can give right now is Bitcoin is the digital currency that's in existence today, that's being used today. So I think it warrants that we just look at that and regulate it, and not worry about the other coins quite yet.
Well, we only ever had Chevy, Ford, and American automakers. Anyways, I would like for you to think about that. I think we're going to be going for a little while longer on this, because I think I love the idea. It's a nice simple fix, but I see some difficulties there. I think I'm stupid. Well, actually, other people do too. But can you explain to me how we get this difference between what the price is on here and what the price is on your exchange? Because it's about 15% difference, give or take.
The reason is our exchange is an exchange where buyers and sellers determine the price they want to pay. Okay. The Bitcoin ATM is not an exchange. It just offers one fixed price that they determine.
Yeah, maybe I can comment on that. So he's right about it's not a fixed price. So what happened in this case is it's a convenience charges, right? Whatever you're convenient, like if you buy a coffee at a very high-end restaurant, you're paying a different price, right? So you have to look at it from a different perspective. Bitcoin transactions and email. Someone gave a pretty good example of what Bitcoin is, and that's the far most best definition I've ever heard. Bitcoin is to money as email is to postal mail. If you look at this, you can think about how, right now 6 billion emails are exchanged every day. Now look at how many postal mail were exchanged maybe like 10, 15 years ago. When computers were invited, the founder of IBM, I believe, said there'll be 3 computers enough for the entire world. And now look at what's happening. So you have to look for Bitcoin from a different perspective. RJ45, also known as Ethernet cable. My co-founder Mo said a very good thing about it. Right now, it's not being used. It's used in space for communication, not for internet. Bitcoin as a whole is a very interesting protocol. You have to look at, like, I'll give you, sending an email is free, but you pay any company to get access to internet. Once you're on a computer, you can send thousands of emails in 1 hour if you have capacity to do so, right? I hope anti-spam law doesn't prohibit you, but this is...
Can I just interject, Haseeb? The question was a specific question.
Yeah.
Why is the price different? You have to answer that directly, right?
So I mentioned to you, like any... It, right now it's around 5%, right?
No, let me go back since I'm asking the question. It was about $80, which is about 15%. Now, I expect when I go to a machine, I know that unless I'm using my bank machine, I will be charged 1.5 on this here, and I'll be charged another on my bank end because I didn't use their machine.
Yep.
So my question is, why do I end up paying 15% difference to you?
So I'll just explain that this price right here for this ATM is coming from the ATM operator is not Haseeb Awan. He is the manufacturer.
No.
So there's an operator.
We're not
who
piling
is
on here.
No, who is. No. There's another party in town who operates a brokerage, and so they have their own kind of buy and sell price, and this price is coming off of their price. So and the price that you're seeing on Vertex is the market price at the current moment, and this price is a different broker plus the convenience fee that is associated for using the ATM.
Okay,
so
but I think you,
as an
I
individual,
want to get off of here so you can ask another question. But I think you got a big problem in between those two prices. I think that when I go on that machine, I would expect that what I'm being charged is what the market is at that time. not what it was 5 days ago, or, I mean, you could play this machine like crazy.
Well, you can't. You can only buy it at a higher price. You can't sell it at that price. So the sell price is a lower price. The sell. So there's a spread on the buying and the
Okay,
sell.
but if I buy it, if I sell it, if I buy it from the exchange, okay,
Yes.
and I sell it on there, I'm still going to make some. I can't move them over to there.
So no, you can't. That would be so the operator would buy it from the exchange and sell it at there, and that operator has to put down the money to actually purchase the machine. So you have to, as a business, you have to make your margin somewhere, and that is the margin because of the convenience. Because otherwise, you spend a week to get verified.
Thank you.
Okay.
Senator Campbell, Senator Green, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to ask you a few questions to build on Senator Massicott's questions about an hour ago now. And these are mainly philosophical questions, I think. It seems to me that right now you're working on convertibility issues. Those are the basic issues that you're working on, and you need to do that in order to help your businesses. Another one you're working on is to smooth out the volatility in the marketplace, and I can see that that's very important to your businesses. But it seems to me that the more you do that, the more you are defeating the purpose of Bitcoin in the first place, which was kind of set up to be a parallel currency that had little to do with convertibility, etc. So so it seems to me that the closer, or the closer you come to having Bitcoin act like a national currency, the further away from the purpose of Bitcoin you become, and which begs the question: what is the need? Why do I, or why does anybody need Bitcoin?
Well, you're making, Senator, you're making a great point. But the answer is buried in the fundamental economic benefits of a low-friction, distributed peer-to-peer network. What we are talking about when we are saying reduce the volatility, add some barriers to entry on the on-ramp and off-ramp, are all intended to make it easier for people to convert from the fiat sector into the digital currency world. Once you're in the digital currency world, no matter how much we wish to try and control it, to regulate it, it is virtually impossible once you're in there with fiat to do much regulation on the transactions that go on peer to peer. It can be very difficult, but you do have some ability to ensure consumer protection and know your client some of the anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism and all that stuff. But and I think, although it isn't the original intent of the currency, the reality is in order for us to gain 75% of the value of this kind of a currency, we're going to have to trade some things off to make sure that society and government in general can, and our banking partners can in fact relate to Bitcoin as a technology. So these are trade-offs. It's not the perfect world, but it is a trade-off that we often have to make.
But all those additional things that you want will cost money, and that will erode the efficiency of the use of Bitcoin, because consumers will ultimately have to
absolutely, absolutely, but it is such a low friction way of doing business that the margin opportunities are so substantial that even with some of this overhead, we believe, and that's what the wonderful world of capitalism, if we believe in it, we can put our money in and let the market determine whether or not we're right. We believe there's still ample opportunity to provide significant returns to the Bitcoin community and the entrepreneurs in that sector at the same time as releasing value into the economy. So you're right. It's just going to be a matter of the magnitude and how well this industry does its job in keeping the costs down.
One more question. Does Bitcoin, in your view, ultimately expand the money supply?
I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer that question, but I look at personally look at Bitcoin as a complement to the money supply, as opposed to a competitor of the money supply. But I'm not an economist that understands the details of M1 and M2. So I think I will resist trying to answer that question.
Thank you very much. We have just passed 6:15, and under the rules of the Senate, we must conclude this Senate Banking Committee meeting. On behalf of all of the members of the committee, I'd like to express to our witnesses our great appreciation for your participation today, most helpful in our deliberations. This meeting is terminated.